Before we dive in, if you're ready to uncover the hidden 45-year war shaping today's headlines, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe with notifications on. This story is unfolding right now. Don't miss the next update. This war has no official declaration. It was never announced to the world from a presidential podium, never ratified by a vote in Congress. It exists in the shadows of international law, a conflict that has shaped global politics for nearly half a century without ever being formally named. There will be no peace treaty. Treaties are for wars that end. This one simply evolves, its battlefronts shifting from desert sands to the digital realm and back again. There are no surrender documents to sign, no clear-cut victories to celebrate, only a perpetual grinding state of hostility that has become the grim normal for 2 generations. And because it is a war that officially does not exist, there is no battlefield memorial in Washington, no black granite wall etched with the names of the fallen. The casualties, American, Iranian, and the many other nationalities caught in the crossfire, are recorded not on a monument, but in classified annexes, hospital records, and the private grief of families scattered across the globe. Their sacrifices are real, but their war remains invisible to the public eye. But for more than 45 years, the United States and Iran have been fighting. This is the story of a shadow war, a term that perfectly captures the nature of this enduring struggle. It's a conflict fought beneath the threshold of conventional warfare, using methods that obscure the hand of the state sponsor. The core principle is plausible deniability, the ability for a government to credibly deny any involvement in an action, even when its fingerprints are everywhere. This is warfare in the gray zone, an ambiguous space between peace and all-out war, where the rules are unwritten and everything is contested. It has been fought through seismic hostage crises that redefined diplomacy and seared themselves into the American psyche. Through undeclared naval shootouts in the Persian Gulf, where American warships and Iranian speedboats played a deadly game of cat and mouse amidst the world's most critical oil shipping lanes. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point through which a fifth of the world's oil passes, became a permanent flashpoint. It has been fought through proxy militias in Iraq and beyond. Iran perfected the art of arming, training, and directing non-state actors to attack its adversaries. These groups gave Tehran a powerful tool to project influence and exact a cost on its enemies, all while maintaining that crucial layer of deniability. For American troops, this meant facing sophisticated roadside bombs and rocket attacks from an enemy whose ultimate commander was hundreds of miles away in Tehran. The conflict has raged through secret back channels and devastating cyber attacks. While diplomats met in secret to negotiate nuclear deals, intelligence agencies waged a parallel war in cyberspace. Malicious code became a weapon capable of crippling nuclear centrifuges or shutting down financial systems. It was a new silent battlefield where an attack could be launched from anywhere in the world, its origins deliberately obscured. And now, the shadows are receding. The gray zone is turning black and white. The conflict is escalating through direct airstrikes on leadership, nuclear sites, and regime targets. The carefully constructed ambiguity is collapsing under the weight of open military action. According to historian David Crist, who spent decades inside the U.S. intelligence community analyzing this very conflict, these are not isolated incidents. They are the connected chapters of one long, continuous story, a Twilight war, a war fought in the half-light between peace and Armageddon, now erupting into open flames on February 28, 2026. The undeclared war is finally threatening to become undeniable. In the Twilight War, Crist argues that since 1979, the U.S. and Iran have been locked in an undeclared struggle, fought not with full invasions, but intelligence, naval forces, militias, sanctions, and cyber. It's a war in the shadows, and it has come perilously close to open war, multiple times. To understand today's strikes, we must start in 1979. Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. embassy, holding 52 Americans for 444 days. For Washington, national humiliation. For Iran, defiance against the Great Satan. A rescue mission ended in disaster. Helicopters crashed, lives lost. The lesson: direct confrontation was too risky. The war went underground. During the Iran-Iraq War, the U.S. protected oil tankers. Iran laid mines, attacked ships. Then 1988, Operation Praying Mantis. In one day, the U.S. Navy destroyed much of Iran's naval forces, the largest U.S. naval battle since W1. No declaration of war, just shadows deepening. U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 gave Iran opportunity. Iran trained, armed militias targeted U.S. forces with advanced EFPs. Hundreds of American troops killed. Washington accused Tehran of proxy war. Tehran denied. Neither side crossed into full open conflict. Iran's nuclear program became the core battlefield. Intensifying sanctions crippled the economy. Cyber ops, like Stuxnet attributed to U.S. Israel, sabotaged facilities. Airstrikes debated. World feared escalation. The Twilight War went digital. Crist's book ends in the early 2010s, but the war never stopped. 2020, U.S. drone strike kills IRGC Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani. Iran fires missiles at U.S. bases. No deaths, but brinkmanship. JCPOA under Obama. Trump withdraws 2018. Maximum pressure returns. Iran breaches limits. Enriches near weapons grade. 2025. Failed talks. Israel strikes nuclear military sites. June 13. U.S. joins. June 21, 22. Bombing Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan. Setback for program. Ceasefire, but snapback UN sanctions reimposed September 2025. For decades, it was a conflict waged in the shadows. A complex dance of plausible deniability, cyber attacks, and proxy warfare. But on February 28, 2026, the twilight that had defined the struggle between the United States, Israel, and Iran was consumed by fire. The shadow war exploded into open, declared combat. In the pre-dawn hours, a coordinated wave of airstrikes, meticulously planned and brutally executed, ripped across the Islamic Republic. The undeclared war was over. A new, terrifyingly overt chapter had begun. The world watched, holding its breath, as years of simmering hostility finally boiled over, threatening to engulf the entire Middle East in a regional conflagration. The question was no longer a direct conflict would happen, but how far it would escalate and what the ultimate cost would be. The Pentagon designated its campaign Operation Epic Fury. Simultaneously, the Israel Defense Forces initiated a parallel but deeply integrated offensive, Operation Roaring Lion. The names themselves, evoking overwhelming force and righteous anger, signaled a decisive break from the past. This was not a limited, retaliatory pinprick. This was a strategic, multi-pronged assault designed to cripple the Iranian regime's military and political infrastructure. From air bases across the region and from naval carriers positioned in the Arabian Sea, American B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, F-35 Lightning IIs, and F-22 Raptors launched alongside waves of Tomahawk cruise missiles. Israeli F-35I Adirs, long-range F-15s, and a sophisticated array of unmanned aerial vehicles joined the onslaught, creating a complex and overwhelming attack profile that aimed to saturate and defeat Iran's air defense network. The target list was extensive, a systematic effort to dismantle the pillars of the regime's power. Joint strikes hammered military command and control centers in Tehran, attempting to sever communication between the leadership and its forces. They targeted the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, hitting their bases, training facilities, and logistics hubs. Production lines for ballistic missiles and drone factories, the very weapons used to project Iranian power across the region, were struck with precision munitions. On the coast, naval assets in key ports like Bandar Abbas were targeted to neutralize Iran's ability to threaten maritime shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. And critically, the strikes revisited the remnants of Iran's nuclear program, sites that had been under intense international scrutiny for years. The goal was unambiguous: to surgically remove the regime's teeth and claws, degrading its capacity to wage war both conventionally and asymmetrically. Then came the political bombshell, delivered not through a formal White House press conference, but via a social media post. President Trump announced on Truth Social that, according to Israeli intelligence, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had been killed in a strike on his compound. The post was blunt and incendiary, declaring one of the most evil people in history was dead. It went further, framing the decapitation strike as the greatest chance for the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow their government. The message concluded with a stark promise: the bombing would continue until the regime was dismantled. This announcement transformed the military operation into an explicit campaign for regime change, a high-stakes gamble that staked the outcome not just on military success, but on a popular uprising within Iran. It was a declaration that sent shockwaves through global capitals, far beyond the physical impact of the bombs themselves. Iran's response was swift and defiant. State media immediately and vehemently denied the American claims, broadcasting messages insisting the country's leadership was safe, secure, and in full command of the nation's defense. They labeled the reports of Khamenei's death as psychological warfare, a desperate lie from the great Satan. But their denial was paired with a furious kinetic retaliation. Within hours, the IRGC launched a massive barrage of ballistic missiles and suicide drones. The targets were the symbols of American and Israeli power in the region. U.S. bases in Iraq and Qatar came under heavy fire. A significant wave of projectiles was directed at Israel, with initial reports suggesting around 40 impacts on Israeli soil, testing its multi-layered air defense shield. The volleys also targeted allies, with missiles reportedly striking targets in Saudi Arabia and Jordan. While advanced interceptor systems like Israel's Iron Dome and David's Sling, along with U.S. Patriot and THAAD batteries, were highly active, some projectiles inevitably broke through. Initial reports indicated casualties were limited, but the message was clear: Iran would not absorb this blow without inflicting its own pain. The entire region was now a live fire zone. For now, both Washington and Jerusalem insisted there would be no ground invasion. The strategy, they claimed, was to achieve their objectives from the air. But the rhetoric of leadership decapitation and the explicit call for regime change had pushed the conflict far beyond the twilight of the shadow war. By openly targeting the supreme leader and calling for the government's collapse, the United States and Israel had crossed a Rubicon. This was no longer a campaign of containment or deterrence. It was a direct challenge to the existence of the Islamic Republic. The world now teetered on the edge of a full-scale regional war, a conflict that could draw in nations from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley. The twilight had blazed into a terrifying, uncertain dawn, and the path forward was shrouded in the smoke of the opening salvos. U.S. forces deployed across Middle East. Iran influences militias in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Houthis, Lebanon. Drone strikes, naval harassment, cyber ops continue amid chaos. Through Crist's lens, consistent pattern of measured, but now intensifying, escalation. As we reach the end of this deep dive, it's easy to see the events of the last 4 decades as a series of disconnected crises. A hostage standoff here, a tanker war there, a terror plot, a cyber attack, a drone strike. But the single biggest takeaway from this 45-year timeline, from the pages of history and the intelligence reports laid bare in books like I, isn't just a collection of historical anecdotes. It's a revelation. It's the understanding that these are not separate stories. They are chapters in a single, sprawling, and continuous narrative of conflict. A conflict that has been waged consistently, methodically, and often just out of sight. The central thesis is this: the present is simply the next chapter, and it's unfolding live, right now, on our screens and in the skies over the Middle East. The strategies of plausible deniability and gray zone warfare, honed since 1979, have not been abandoned. They have been perfected. The seeds of the Iranian Revolution didn't just sprout a new government. They planted a forest of proxy forces across the region, a strategic buffer and an offensive tool that has grown more sophisticated with each passing year. From the streets of Beirut to the mountains of Yemen, from the political backrooms of Baghdad to the plains of Syria, this network acts as the arms and armor of a state that has mastered the art of fighting without declaring war. Today's headlines scream, "New crisis," "Unprecedented escalation," or "On the brink of war." But when viewed through the long lens of history, it becomes clear that this is a continuation, not a beginning. It is one long, unbroken contest. The tactics have evolved, but the strategic goals have remained remarkably consistent. For Iran, it's about regime survival, regional dominance, and the expulsion of American influence. For the United States and its allies, it's about ensuring regional stability, protecting the free flow of global commerce, and preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. These goals are fundamentally incompatible, creating a permanent state of friction. Every action has been calculated, every reaction measured. The conflict has been unresolved, simmering in the shadows, only to boil over at critical moments. We saw it in the tanker wars of the 1980s, a direct test of American naval resolve. We saw it in the devastatingly effective use of explosively formed penetrators, or EFPs, against coalition forces in Iraq, a masterclass in asymmetric proxy warfare. We saw it in the digital realm with the Stuxnet worm, a sophisticated cyber weapon that crossed a new threshold in non-kinetic attacks, proving that infrastructure could be crippled without firing a single shot. And now, we are witnessing the most dangerous phase yet. The escalation from the shadows into direct, state-on-state strikes. The carefully constructed veil of plausible deniability is being torn away, strike by retaliatory strike. This shift is the culmination of decades of pressure, provocation, and preparation. The maximum pressure campaign, the withdrawal from the JCPOA, the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani, these were not isolated policy decisions. They were accelerants poured onto a fire that had been burning for 40 years. The subsequent retaliatory missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq were a direct message. The gloves were coming off. The proxy attacks became bolder, the maritime harassment more frequent, and the nuclear program, unconstrained by the deal, spun faster and faster. Each side has been testing the other's red lines, pushing the boundaries of what is survivable, what is acceptable, and what will trigger an unstoppable cascade. The events of 2025 and 2026 are not a sudden storm. They are the hurricane making landfall after we watched it gather strength across the ocean for years. So the fundamental question we must ask ourselves is not, will there be a war? That question is a decade too late. It's a question for a world that no longer exists. The real question, the one that cuts to the heart of our current reality, is this. Has the war already been happening all along? And are we simply witnessing the moment it finally breaks wide open for all the world to see? Are we moving from the Twilight War into the harsh, unforgiving light of day? If this breakdown helped you connect the dots from 1979 to the explosions rocking today's headlines, then our mission was a success. To help us continue making these deep dives, please smash that like button. It tells the algorithm that this kind of in-depth analysis matters. Now we want to hear from you. Based on everything we've covered, what do you think happens next? Is de-escalation possible, or is a wider regional conflict inevitable? Comment your analysis below. And to ensure you don't miss our next investigation into the forces shaping our world, hit that subscribe button and, crucially, turn on all notifications. In a story that moves this fast, you need to be in real time with us. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden history behind the news, share it with someone who needs to see it. Geopolitics isn't a spectator sport full of isolated incidents. It's a multi-layered, interconnected reality. And this hidden war, this twilight struggle, has been shaping everything from the price of gas to the deployment of troops for nearly half a century. Understanding its past is the only way to make sense of its present and perhaps to influence its future. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, and above all, stay informed.